Okay, cool. I'm down. All right. So when I started working here, Jonathan gave me some money to buy everybody curriculum. So that's why all of you have curriculums that are on your office. If you don't, we can talk about how you can get some. But he also, there's some extra money left. And so he said, what do you want to spend it on? And I said, I got some books I really, really, really like. Can we buy some for every office? And he said, sure. So in your somewhere, you should have 3 books. One is called A Teachable Moment. Maybe if you can see that. The one that we're going to focus on first is the Training Terrific Staff. And then there should be a third one called Team Challenges. If any of you are missing those, we have extra copies here. Let me know and we'll get them to you. So if you're watching this also as a recording, feel free to let me know and we'll get you those. So first one is Training Terrific Staff. If you look at it, it's really written, and feel free to ask questions, like pretty informal here. It's really written to be for camp counselors, but I think you'll find out that there's so much more cool stuff in here that you can use if you're training leaders, youth leaders, volunteers, whatever it happens to be. So first of all, Michael Brandwin is amazing. So if you're looking for a good person to help you with camp training leaders, he does a business side and he also does a youth side. There's his website, but seriously, really good stuff coming from him. If you're ever at a conference and he's a speaker, go. Great guy. So I talked about this. The book is designed for a camp that's probably like all summer long. But once again, there's some really great things that you can incorporate into everyday things that you do. So just because it says a handbook for camp, ignore that part and just know that you can replace the word camp with other things. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at it all, but I was reading through it this morning, some of my favorite things. If you look at the prologue, oh my goodness, what a great, if you're holding a training, use the prologue. Like literally, it's step-by-step words you should say. Basically, the concept is he gets real excited, we're going to take a hike, and he says, hey, we need some, I'm missing something. People find it, it's a map, but it's a really cool way, like he's good about saying word for word what you should say. So there's some ways that you can just use this book if you're gonna host an event and you wanna, your group is working on some goal setting, this is a great way to get them energetic and excited for what you're doing. Or camp counselor training, you can totally use it. If you get to meet him or watch his videos on his website, he's just a really charismatic, kind of goofy looking guy. And so I think he could really pull this off, and I'm sure we could, with time, pull this off also. It's a staff training for volunteers or youth. So once again, replace the word camp with 4-H or 4-H program. And during it, he talks about the GSM. And that means that when you train, you set goals, you look at the skills required that the staff is going to need, whether that's volunteers or youth of an event you're planning. And then what's the method you're going to use to get those skills out to the people that you're working with. And then, once again, if you don't have camp, don't throw this book away. Don't put it on your shelf. Replace the word camp with 4-H program, a specific 4-H program like award ceremony, or you're going to do a family fun night, whatever it is. I think that you could replace this, the word camp, with any of those things that you want to do. So I think we look at this and we see camp and you're like, oh, I already have my camp counselor training plan. I don't need this. Or you're like, I don't even do camp. Don't let the camp hold you back, because I think this book has some really cool stuff in it that you can use every day. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what those look like. So we look at the chapters. Chapter 1 through 7 is all about setting goals. And so think about how important that is. I did a training last night, and one of the things in our mission and vision and values is that we're going to give kids the opportunity to set goals. And sometimes that's a struggle. So I think it's important. This is some great tips for that goal setting concept. So the first thing he talks about is getting everybody on the same page and making sure that you're all working towards the same goals. And that your goals are going to be best established if you get your youth leaders, volunteers in the same place. So Emily, I'm just thinking about you. We went up there and did a shooting sports training for her, and her people are not on the same page. So there may be some tips in here that you could use if you want to start next year off right, to have them set some goals and make sure that everybody's on the same page moving forward. And if you're looking for specific examples, chapter 7 has like 5 or 6 actual lesson plans for goal setting that you can incorporate into whatever you're doing. Once again, he has a camp theme to all of his trainings, but you could definitely modify it a bit to make it specific to whatever your program has to be. So if you're looking for some ways to help people set goals for an event, activity, an entire 4-H program, this has some great stuff. A lot of times Mary Kay and I, or sometimes Hannah Swanbaum or any of those people will come in and do some visioning or strategic planning for your program. I think you could even use the things in chapter 7 to do some of that on your own. So if you're looking for a way to set up your program the right way from the beginning, maybe September, October, look at those different goal setting experiences. And I think that you could use those to then set goals for your whole program for the year. So cool stuff in there. So then the next chapters, which are 8 to 13, focus on the S of the GSM, the skills. And so what it's going to do is it actually, there's a quote at the beginning of chapter 8 that says, develop in writing a more specific curriculum of the skills we want staff to learn and use that to accomplish our goals. And Michael Brandwin says, this is the most important sentence in the whole entire book. And I think the key here is that we don't want to train people, or we don't want to do things that have nothing to do with what our end result is. And so when we think about this, making sure that whatever you do throughout the year, or whatever trainings you offer, or however you do it, is related to what happened at the beginning, those goals that you set. A great comment for leaders too is that, why are we teaching kids these 3 things in the project when they literally have no desire to learn any of those things? So if we're going to work with kids to set goals, then in turn, the things we do throughout the year should work to accomplish those goals. And so then he spends the next 5 chapters, 1 chapter on each, basically going through the 5 steps to identify those goals. So first are skills. So you identify the skills that you think, or that people think they need to reach their goals. Make sure that they're super specific, not generalized. Organize them into a logical manner, and then prioritize them to make sure that you're teaching them in a manner that makes sense. And then make sure that the skills that you're teaching relate to your goals. So going back to your goals and saying, what skill am I teaching that relates to this goal? What skill am I teaching that relates to this goal? So once again, like, this is camp focused, but all that stuff is right on target with the program that we have in 4-H. And then chapters 14 to 26 look at methods you can do to help these things happen. So how you teach the curriculum. And so this, if you're struggling to figure out how to maybe help leaders learn or help youth learn, there's might be some great tips in here of different ways that you can make that training or those skill training happen. So the first one he talks about is the pass down principle, which I think this is something that we have talked about forever, but maybe never called it PDP or anything, but the concept that you're going to model what your staff is going to do. So if you go to a leader training, you're not prepared, you're not enthusiastic, you're not excited about it, then what's going to happen? You're going to train a bunch of leaders who are not excited, who are not prepared, and who really could care less to be part of your program. So I think going into your program is, what can I emanate that I want people to actually learn? So I try to be excited. Nobody probably knows this. I'm semi-introvert. I try not to be when I do presentations, because I think it's important for people to get excited about the things that we're learning. So make sure that whatever you're doing is stuff that you want to pass down to the people that you're training or the people that you're working with. Learn from people who have taught you. So think back to who's a great presenter. Actually, some of the books that I'm talking about, I've seen these people present and they are amazing. So think about the things that they did that then you can do when you do training. So what kind of things did that one leader do that you really liked, or what kind of things did that person did that you hated, and making sure you don't repeat those same mistakes as your own training happens. Make sure this, in the book it talks about camp begins before it starts, but I think that this could go for anything. Like, your 4-H program doesn't start on October 1st when you have this meeting and end on September 31st. Your 4-H program is ongoing. So don't talk about, in the future we're going to do this. Talk about, in our program, this is going to happen. So making sure that you're not setting a start date, but instead you're working in the middle of it. So one of the things he talks about is pre-camp training. So if you bring your counselors in a couple days early, or you do a camp training a couple months ahead of time, don't talk about when camp starts, we'll do this. Talk about when the campers arrive, this might happen, because you're already really in the camp setting. You're already doing the program. So don't make it sound like it's futuristic. Make it sound like it's happening now, so that we make sure that you are emanating the mood and what you want to happen from the beginning. Be sure you're ready. This is one of my biggest pet peeves in life, is when I show up to a meeting and You know, nobody's really ready. Nobody has an agenda. Nobody knows what's going on. If you're going to invite people in, if you're going to have them come, make it worth their time and be ready for them when they get there. I also do this terribly. I'm notorious for being late. And so I drive myself crazy on this one too. Make sure that your training is action oriented. So I think this is funny because we're doing this training on Zoom and you can't do any action oriented items while we're training. I think we are great at talking about 4-H being hands-on, but when we present things like leader training, last night, today, there really happens to be the fact that literally we don't have any action-oriented items. So when you're working with people, think about ways you can put hands-on stuff into your training. And once again, that's something that I struggle with also. Encourage note-taking. We don't do this very often anymore because we do PowerPoints and we record them and we save them. But he said, in his book, he talks about the fact for note-taking isn't to have notes so that you can refer back to them later, but writing stuff down helps to solidify it in your mind to really make you want to use it. And so the note-taking isn't about being able to reflect on it later. It's about making sure you write down points that are important so that way you're going to actually use them in the future. Feed their eyes is one of the chapters, and this basically means use some graphics, have a PowerPoint in front of them, even if you don't refer to it, have a flip chart, have, he uses the word overhead projector, so this is an old school book, but basically what it's saying is put stuff on the board because you may say, all right, now I want you to look at this question, and you get in small groups and people completely forget what the question is. So having it written somewhere where people can look at it and refer back to it is really helpful. So having graphics and things in the room to help kind of motivate them is a good idea. Make sure that you encourage participation. In the book, he talks about the fact that we often say, all right, the example he gives is we're going to work with clay now and I need 3 volunteers. And so 3 people come up and you're like, all right, you 3 get to work with clay. The rest of you all get to watch them. And how fair is that to our participants where 3 people get the hands-on manipulative and the rest of the group just gets to watch them? Give them all clay. Let them all participate. Sometimes our space or the cost tends to inhibit this, but think about ways that everybody gets to do that same activity versus it being a demonstration, because if you're able to actually do it, you're much more likely to remember what you were learning. And then he talks about a way to do that is, he calls it WIBY. So it's WIBYI. And it's write it down before you talk. And so the way that you can do that is if you have a question or you have a problem, say, all right, everybody take out a piece of paper. Here's the question, write down your thoughts, because people are much more likely to make good inferences or actually some good comments if they have a chance to actually think about it and write it down. So he talks, there's an entire activity on using WIBYI, or WIBY as he calls it. So you can read about what that, a little bit more about what that entails in his book. Then he talks about making sure you give them time to practice. And then also when you conclude, identify what's important. We spend all day training camp counselors or whatever leader training, it's 2 hours. And sometimes those things that were really important at the beginning get lost at the end. And so he has an entire chapter that talks about ways you can make sure that you kind of highlight in a fun way the things that were talked about throughout your training. Talks about working in small groups and how that's successful. So you can read more about that if you want to do some small group work. He also talks about scheduling the training correctly, like making sure that the things that are really important happen at the right time versus doing it kind of in the middle where it gets lost. So there's a whole chapter about if you're planning a training, what kind of things do you put at the beginning, what kind of things do you put at the end. And then there's a whole chapter on how to meet and greet and what people can do at the beginning when they're bored, sitting around waiting for the activity to start. So I think this is what I really struggle with. A lot of times you'll have people show up 15, 20 minutes early, and most of the time I feel like I just want to spend time getting stuff done in my office or working, and that maybe doesn't set the right mode for a meeting that you're having. So he gives you some ideas of ways that you can engage them while they're sitting around waiting for people to arrive. So the methods of how you can do training or how you can make sure that you're incorporating that skills and goal setting is the entire chapters 14 to 26. And those are the topics that he covers. And so you can read more in depth. If you're thinking about planning a training and you really want to make sure you talk about what kind of visuals you're going to have around, read the chapter on Feed the Eyes and it'll help you out. So good stuff in there. It's nothing about training, but more about the method of how we do that. And then the rest of the book is completely filled with activities you can do at camp counselor training. And once again, activities you can do at any type of training. So read through them and figure out how you can kind of tweak them to make them work for what you're doing. The good news is that they're tangible and they follow that goal, skill, and methodology ideas that he's talking about. They also include the skills areas addressed. So if you turn to any of the activities, I think they're like chapter 20, like there's chapter 35. I'm looking at it. It's called BTCOD. And once again, he has tons of acronyms, but it's Beyond the Call of Duty. It talks about the skill areas, so defining leadership, teamwork, and problem solving, listening to specific instructions, and identifying specific actions that help others. So if those are the things you're wanting to meet, pull this out. Once again, it talks about camp, but you can definitely change it to make it what you want to. The other great thing about this is that it includes discussion questions. So if you look at page 287, it goes through and basically scripts out for you how to lead the discussion about this activity, which is the part I enjoy, because for me, that's the hard part of our jobs, I think, is that it's experiential learning model. The doing is super easy. The sharing's not so hard, but when you go to that application, that's where things for me become kind of blurry and I struggle with making sure that I get my point across. And the great news is that this book includes how to do that almost in a scripted method. And he has little cliff notes on the side in case you need some extra help with that. So I really appreciate the book for that also. And then once again, all of these can easily be modified to address not just camp, but 4-H programs in general. So if you look through, basically he has, I think there's 20 or 30 different activities that you can use probably within your program and definitely for training camp staff. So that's kind of that book in general. So hopefully now you don't let it sit on your shelf, because I know that's probably where it's been for most of your life since you got there. Not knowing what was in it, maybe and seeing the word camp, thought that it was just for you to pull out during camp time, but it definitely includes some cool stuff that you can do throughout the year when you're planning a volunteer training and need some extra help. It's going to really be there to do that and provide you with the methods to be able to have a successful one. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. I've kind of talked too fast and that kind of thing. So the next one is A Teachable Moment. So if you have that one of my absolute favorite books. It's written by a lady named Michelle Cummings and Jim Kane. They are equally, if not more amazing than Michael Brandwin. So if you have a chance to go see either one of them, they do a lot of Camping Association conferences. They seriously are some of the coolest people to listen to and get ideas from. So they each have their own website. Michelle Cummings is actually called Training Wheels. Be careful when you Google Michelle Cummings, because Michelle Cummings is also a bodybuilder, so you get lots of weird pictures that pop up. But if you Google Training Wheels, it will give you her website. So if you have money at the end of the year and you're looking for something to spend money on, go to her online store. She has some super cool things that you can use and in lots of different settings. And we'll talk about what they are in a second. But Training Wheels is an awesome website. And then Jim Kane, his is called Teamwork and Team Play, which is another book. If you're looking for a book to grab, Teamwork and Team Play is a great book. But he also has some online resources and things you can purchase. You can watch videos from both of them. They're really, really good sites. So this is an entire book of debriefing ideas. So this is once again that apply section that I struggle with, and which is why I probably pick these books out, is this do, reflect, apply. You meet with your junior leaders, you have this great activity, you play games, it's so fun. And now they all go home and they don't remember anything that happened except for that they played games. So this entire book gives you ways that you can debrief with them. I think there's like over probably 70 or 80 different ways to debrief with people. And a lot of them take some prepping on your part, but not all of them. So you want to look through and figure out which ones you might need to prep some stuff, or you can buy. That's what's at Training Wheels too, is ways to debrief. She has some really cool things that you can use to debrief your different activities. So they divide the book into 5 categories. So there's debriefing that's active and kinesthetic. So if you're at a large camp, then you may want to use this one because kids are going to get to move around and have fun. If you have an artistic group, or you have a group who likes to draw or think about pictures, there's an artistic expressions category. We're all used to that circle where we get in a circle and we all talk about our favorite things. So there's an entire section on alternatives to being in that sharing circle and ways you can share without being in a circle, or being in a circle and not just sharing the other things. Metaphoric, which means basically that alternatives to visualizing and thinking about what this might look like. And then there's a section on self-reflective. So they're not sectioned off. They just happen to be, I believe, in in alphabetical order. So you'll need to kind of look through and they will tell you what they are within them. So, but once again, this book is great because I think it's a struggle for everybody to get to that apply section, even for our leaders. And so you could even teach them some of these tools with their clubs or their projects that they're doing. So cool stuff. So, and then if you struggle with activity or program reflection, the first few pages of the book, the first couple of chapters before the activity start, talk all about how and why we debrief. So if this isn't something that you're normally doing, it's going to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like. It talks about the value of it, the steps that you use. It has some application questions in here that you can use or kind of have in your back pocket. But the first, I think, like 20, 25 pages, it really just talks about the art of reflection and why that's important. So not a lot more in this book, but definitely cool if you're doing activities. You can pull this out and be like, all right, what can I do to help us debrief so we don't sit in a circle and talk about the things that we learned today? It gives you an alternative to that. All right. Another book that you should have in your office is called Team Challenges. So this book, it's just fun. It's really just a fun book. It's super cool. I used to have a junior leader group that would meet. I don't use it anymore with what I do now, but I used to have a junior leader group that would meet once a month, and I would basically just pull activities from this book to do with them, just because it literally is super fun. The goal of the book was created to help teach kids how to be creative, cooperative, and communicate, but literally they will have a blast. The huge disadvantage of this book is a lot of the activities require you to have stuff. So what I mean by that is like toilet paper rolls and just random newspaper, random stuff. They're building a lot of towers or constructing different things. And so if you're going to use this book, there's probably half of them are things where you don't have to have a lot of stuff, but the other half is really all about having junk. So one of the counties that I worked in had like a teacher store where everybody would donate all their randomly weird like Pringles cans and toilet paper rolls and things like that. So if you want to have a room somewhere in your office, if you have this kind of space to collect that kind of junk, you can put a blurb in your newsletter and ask for those in order to complete this. And so what I started doing was I had a big, large tote, and I would just start collecting all the junk that was asked for in this Team Challenges book. So if you're going to use it, some of them are going to require some prep, which isn't always fun, but not all of them require that. So look through it, maybe even have a teen group look through it and pick the ones that they want to do and then know if you need a plan for them. So not a lot about that book. It's really just a book to have a lot of fun and be silly. So it would be great to incorporate into junior leaders, maybe some volunteer leaders, and even camp counselor training. I think if you want to think about what this book is about, think about the marshmallow challenge where you get either toothpicks or spaghetti noodles and you got to build a bridge, that kind of stuff. That's entirely, this is 170 plus of those kind of things happen. So sometimes you can't think of how to make that marshmallow bridge challenge a little bit different. So this book gives you 170 of those to be able to do. So those are the 3 books that are sitting in your office. Hopefully now you have a better idea of what they are and how you can use them every day and when you want to pull them off the shelf. Also, if you have some extra money to spend, I'm going to tell you more about other books that are my favorite. So if you're going to do team building, some of my favorite books are called Activities That Teach. And I came across this, I don't even know why I ordered it, but then it became my favorite. So it looks like this, Activities That Teach. And the cool thing about it is it's very similar to the first book, the Camp Counselor Training, where it really talks about what to do. So it has literally an entire book of activities, and on each page it talks about the topic area. So this one's called Bridges that I'm looking at. It has decision making and problem solving. So if that's something you want to teach your kids, you pull this up, tells you what you need, how long it's going to take you. And then at the end, it has a whole page of discussion ideas, which is once again why I like it. So if you're looking for a book, I think it looks here, it's like probably 15, 20 bucks, Activities That Teach. So if that's not enough, then look at, they have this called More Activities That Teach, super great. And then if that's not enough, they have still more Activities That Teach. So I got all 3 of them because they were my go-to books when I was planning a training, because sometimes it's last minute because you don't have time to prep for weeks at a time. So I just pull those out, pick out 4 activities I like, and then we play those games at our junior leader meeting. Or you could use them at the beginning of a leader training or at the beginning of a 4-H council meeting, but those books are awesome. Another book I love is called Playing with a Full Deck. This is off Michelle Cummings' her website, but basically it's 52 team building activities you can do with a deck of cards. So This requires little to no prep because you can just grab a couple boxes of deck of cards. Anybody who lives by Riverton, Amanda can go to the casino and she gets them for free. But this book is awesome because it just literally has activities. You just grab a deck of cards and you play with them. So super, super fun. And then you can also get creative and kids can create their own games with cards. Adults can create their own games, but super easy way to go. So if you want to order another book, I suggest this one. Let's see. I don't have any of these books with me. I left them all at my last job, but if you want to look for an awesome person to talk about team building, Carl Ronke is amazing. He has so much cool stuff. So once again, he's another guest speaker. If he's at a conference you're at, go listen to him too. But some of the ones that are my favorites, he has probably about 15 different books all about team building games. Fun and Games is a super easy one. Quicksilver, Silver Bullet, but you can look at his website up and he has them all listed. You can't go wrong with a Carl Ronke book. So feel free to grab any of them. You may have some of them sitting on your shelf if you're lucky. Then we spend a lot of time in the car with kids or hanging out with kids where we're not actually doing anything like waiting. So I would suggest maybe getting some books that will help you there. So this is the one I have in my office. It's called, I don't even know what it's called, Zabamola, so whatever that is, by Randy Horn. And it's basically like a would you rather book. So it says, and some of them are a little bad, so make sure you be careful what you buy. But would you rather lick the tongue of a random dog for 30 seconds or steal a bone from a pit bull? So they're dumb and they're ridiculous, but I think they get kids talking and having fun and engaging. So if you have a new group of kids or a group of kids you're putting in the car that don't know each other, it's kind of a fun way to get them talking and thinking about stuff and having a good time. So it's good to use at the beginning of the year. But some of them are really, really weird. So would you rather have the kind of personality that causes people to believe you're a convincing manipulator or a pathological liar? And then, I mean, they're weird, but then kids have to explain why. So if those are too much for you, you can also get the If books. And I don't have any of those in my office. I left them in my last job, but they're like questions, like the book of questions or that kind of thing. So you can they basically have 500 different questions that you can ask kids and then they have to answer them. And it gets them, once again, talking without being too invasive. So there's 3 or 4 different If books. There's one about the If book about love. Don't get that one. Kind of way too weird. So make sure that you read the title. They have Would You Rather books for kids. You could also do those if you're looking for something for even younger kids. But those are really fun to have in your back pocket. I used to have them sitting on my desk and people would come in and just read them. And it kind of was a conversation starter too. Then the last book I want to tell you about, this one has nothing to do with team building or whatever, but it's a good book. I was going to, right before I left my last job, I was going to do a book study with my junior leaders on it, and it's called, a little dog on it, If You're Not the Lead Dog, The View Never Changes. And so it really just talks about being a leader and what that looks like, and it's really written in a pretty simplistic way. So I know leaders often struggle that maybe we have a large variety of learning styles and learning levels. It may even be a good one for you to buy for all your council officers or all the people that are helping you on a committee, because then they can read through it. It talks about the different aspects of, it focuses on attitude, passion, focus, urgency, teamwork, balance, unreasonable thinking, compassion, perseverance, detachment, moving forward. And it's all about what it looks like if you're the leader and also being a follower within your leading position. So if you're looking for another book just for a good read, that's really simple. See, it's not very thick at all. Definitely a cool book to check out for people to read just for fun, to learn more about leadership. And it's not written in one of those 7 effective, highly whatever people. Those are, to me, are kind of in depth and more probably for people who are working in leadership. This one is written for the general public to kind of give them the nuts and bolts of being a leader within their community. So, all right. That's the end. So I guess hopefully that helps you to kind of know what's sitting in your office and what you can use. And if you don't have them in your office, let me know and I will get you a copy. But those are the ins and outs of the books I gave you, and maybe if you want to spend some money, where you can spend money. But definitely check out Michelle Cummings' website, Training Wheels. Super good. Go to their online store. And then Jim, I know Michael Brandwin and Jim Kane also have videos you can watch that are really cool. And once again, if you see them live, go see them because they're super great to be able to listen to and learn more from. So, all right. That's all I have. Looks like Kim might ask me a question. Go for it.
No, I was just going to say thank you. I actually, so we do camp and have done the first one that you did, the camp trainers one, and that one worked really nice. Definitely. I did use, you talked about having that you could just take and do that one about going for a hike, and we did it with our kids and used it as a script, and it was perfect. Worked great.
Yeah, and that's probably the best thing about his book is it's very scripted. So if you struggle with this kind of stuff, like literally, you could almost read it word for word as long as you add your own enthusiasm in it, and it wouldn't be that hard to replicate within any program that you're doing. So that's the good news about what he does too, is he really just gives you the tools without you having to think too much about them. All right, cool. Once again, if you need any help, if you want to borrow, I showed you all these books. I have them in my office, so if you want to borrow them before you buy them, I'm coming to see you all in the next couple months, so let me know and I can bring them with me. I think I've given a couple to Amber at one point in time, or I said I would. Maybe I never gave them to her. But if you're looking for, if you just want to see them, or I can bring them with me and you can look through them, and then you can decide if you want to spend the money out of your budget on them too. But let me know. So.
Okay, I do have a side question since
Yep.
you're done. Who all came to the January 4th show and tell one? I did not do a roll call at that one.
I was there at the beginning, but then I left.
Okay.
I'm going to stop the recording.